You may be seated. Let the record reflect that the defendant is present along with counsel for the defendant, assistant state attorney. Both sides ready to proceed.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir. We do have, I think, a potential objection that may arise with the first witness.
Okay, what is it?
Bring it, Melendez-Diaz issue. The reports that are being introduced, we do not have an objection as to a custodian of records type introduction. However, if the witness is going to testify about reports that he did not compile or he did not even download, we would certainly have an objection to that as a Melendez-Diaz violation.
Well, the question is, are these business records? State can meet the predicate for business records, then they come in. Anything else?
Just a discussion about that, Judge.
Discussion about what? Either they can establish a business records exception to the hearsay rule, or they can't. All right, let's get the witness in here and let's return to jury.
John Camperlengo, Camperlengo.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Please tell the court and the members of the jury your occupation, sir.
I am the Chief Compliance Officer and General Counsel of Gentiva Health Services. It's the largest home care and hospice company in the United States.
Okay. Where is your office located?
Atlanta, Georgia is where our headquarters is located, but we have approximately 500 offices throughout the United States, including in Florida.
What are your responsibilities as General Counsel and you said Chief Compliance Officer?
That's correct. Generally, I am responsible for the legal affairs of the company, ensuring regulatory requirements are met, rules and regulations are followed. We are a heavily regulated company. We are a provider of Medicare services, and there's a lot of regulation in there. We're a publicly traded company, so there's a lot of regulations there. I deal with the board of directors of our company on a regular basis, and just general legal affairs of the company.
All right. And as Chief Compliance Officer, is it these regulations, federal regulations that you're referring to, that you are responsible for ensuring that Gentiva complies with?
Yes, ma'am. There are numerous regulations when you're providing health care. Any health care provider has to follow these. Are federal Medicare regulations, correct? And as Chief Compliance Officer, I'm responsible for that.
Does Gentiva have either policies or regulations that govern the retention of any sort of information or documentation?
Yes, we have a regular retention policy. Most of our documents are patient files, and those are collected and maintained at the branch, sent off to an off-site location through a third-party vendor. And as well as electronic records are subject to those, and we maintain those in our electronic databases and with an outside vendor as well, in some instances.
Are there certain regulations that require you to keep, for example, emails for a specified period of time?
There is a company policy. I'm not aware of a federal regulation that requires us, but there's company policy that we maintain those for a period of time. For, a patient record, for example, under Medicare regulations has a 10-year retention requirement.
All right. Are those documents maintained in a specific location or under specified circumstances?
The documents are maintained. The electronic documents, emails and things of that nature are maintained in our Kansas location that's located in Overland Park, Kansas. There is a separate security officer who's responsible for that maintenance of those records. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Does Gentiva have one server that would provide service to all of the locations, either on the Eastern Seaboard or throughout the country?
There are likely to be several servers for email, but the clinical retention, clinical management system that we have is maintained in Kansas. It's an AS400, and it's located in Overland Park, Kansas.
All right. Is that kept in the time zone in which the server or the maintenance location exists?
It is maintained on a central standard time zone, so that if any records that are electronically time-stamped will have a 1 hour behind Eastern time and 2 hours ahead of Pacific time. So it's maintained on a central standard time.
All right. So as a result of company policy or any applicable federal regulation, does Gentiva, in the regular course of business, compile data such as emails received by employees?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
All right. How about emails deleted by employees?
Yes, when the emails are placed on the server, even if they're deleted, they're retrievable. We have a script within our organization. It was this is not a manual process other than entering the date range if you wanted to retrieve any of these. The script is already set, and it retrieves them, it pulls them back, whether they're deleted or not.
Okay. And that would also include then emails sent by employees as well?
Absolutely, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you have knowledge as to whether or not the emails are backed up at regular intervals and then maintained electronically?
Yes, I do. Our Vice President of Information Technology and I speak regularly on, they are maintained on tapes if they're not maintained on a local server, because after a while the server fills up and you have to send it to an offsite. And we have to make sure that there's a record of all this, because if there's ever a data security breach, we're subject to a federal law known as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA. You may have heard of it if you've visited a doctor. And if there's ever a breach, we would have to notify all the patients whose records have been lost. So it's a very tight system to make sure that documents that fall on the server are then sent off-site in a controlled environment.
Okay. Do you know whether or not Gentiva, in the regular course of business, records and compiles data related to the use of computer terminals at the workstations at particular offices?
If you, I'm not sure I understand your question. Can you clarify it for me?
Can you tell us whether or not part of the record of the regularly conducted business activity at Gentiva would include documentation of what is occurring at specified workstations?
If it's maintained on a particular server that we would have held the records, yes, that's correct, ma'am. Yes.
All right. Are the records also maintained under a particular user ID?
Yes, any time that there's a login, everybody in the company has a unique login and ID, and you're able to retrieve information from the various servers that we have, the various programs, based upon that ID and the unique employee identifier ID.
All right. So every employee of Gentiva has their own network login?
That's correct. It usually consists of your first initial, your middle initial, and then the first 5 letters of your last name, or 6 letters of your last name.
All right. In addition to what we've already discussed, does Gentiva, in the regular course of business, record and compile data related to the clock in and out times of its employees?
The company has a system known as Unity. It's the clinical administration or management system. And our caregiver management staff, the branch directors and the managers of clinical practice, record certain information in our clinical management system. When someone logs into that system, a time stamp is made in that Kansas time, the 1 hour behind the Eastern time, and that is recorded and maintained.
Okay. Do you have knowledge whether or not a Cynthia M. Anthony was an employee of Gentiva at a location in Winter Park, Florida in March of 2008?
Yes, ma'am. I think June 24th, I received a phone call from a detective with the Orange County, Florida Sheriff's Office, I believe, and asked me to retrieve some records. And I said I would be happy to once I received a subpoena from a court of competent jurisdiction, because again, I'm subject to HIPAA rules and I didn't know what might be in any of the records that he was requesting. I received a subpoena and it related to the phone records for the Winter Park office, the computer activity, the internet activity, and some other information relative to Mrs. Cynthia Anthony.
All right. Your Honor, at this point, there is a stipulation that I provided to the clerk regarding some employee information.
Mr. Baez?
Yes, sir, that is stipulation as represented.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is the following stipulation between the state of Florida and the defendant. In 2008, Cindy Anthony was employed by Gentiva Health Services. The attached documents are a true and accurate copy of the business records of Gentiva Health Services regarding Cindy Anthony's employment from January 1st, 2008 through July 16th, 2008. The parties have agreed to this fact, and it should be considered as true in your deliberations, bearing the signatures of Linda Drain Burdick, Jose Baez, and Caylee Marie Anthony.
Your Honor, at this time, I would seek to introduce SA for identification evidence.
What says the defense? Be received in evidence as states exhibit number. You may.
Tell me if that is an employee profile for Cynthia M. Anthony.
Yes, it appears to be one that I'm familiar with in my role at Gentiva as a manager of a staff. So I've seen this document before, not on Mrs. Anthony, but for other employees within the company. So I'm familiar with it.
All right. About a third of the way down on the page, does the employee profile indicate what Miss Anthony's network ID or network login was?
Yes, it does, ma'am.
Okay. And what was Miss Anthony's network login when she was an employee of Gentiva?
CMANTH09.
CMANTHO.
No, N, I'm sorry, N.
Is that consistent with your knowledge of the way that the names are parsed to supply the network login information?
Yes, ma'am. Mine is J.N. Camper.
Were the records that were requested of you relating to Caylee Marie Anthony, did they include deleted, received, and sent emails for the week of March 17th of 2008?
Yes, that was the period of time that the subpoena requested that information.
Are those emails consistent with your prior testimony, ones that were kept in the course of regularly conducted business at Gentiva?
Yes, that's correct. The script was run through our IT department, and they were provided to the state. And yes.
All right. If I may show you a series of documents, if I may approach the witness, Your Honor.
You may.
These are marked And I apologize for duplication. RT, a composite exhibit for identification. RU, RV, RW, a composite, and RX, another composite. If I can have you take a look at those and tell us if those are the deleted, received, and sent emails to the Gentiva account of Caylee Marie Anthony for the week of March 17th of 2008.
This looks consistent to what was provided to me by the IT department, yes.
All right. Now, as the records custodian and chief compliance officer, you directed members of your organization to provide these business records to you for distribution in compliance with the subpoena, correct?
Upon the receipt of the subpoena, I contacted our IT department, Mr. Paul Stein, and asked him to produce the records since he's at the network or architectural vice president of information technology. That's his responsibility. And I asked him to produce these records. We've done this many times before.
Okay. And are you familiar, well, those are emails, so they're the pretty standard Outlook form of email?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I would seek to introduce the referenced lettered exhibits for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
No objections.
They will be received in evidence as states exhibits.
RT will become States Exhibit number 339. RU will become States Exhibit number 340. RV will become States Exhibit number 341. RW will become States Exhibit number 342. And RX will become States Exhibit number 343.
As custodian of records at Gentiva, did you ask for the login and log out times of an individual by the name of Cynthia Marie Anthony for the week of March 17th of 2008?
Yes, I did. It was part of the subpoena request.
If I may approach the witness with RY for identification.
You may.
Thank you.
Do you recognize that document?
Yes, this was the document that I produced in response to the subpoena. And it is the login information for CM Anton.
All right. Was that login information kept in the regular course or the course of regularly conducted business at Gentiva?
Yes, it was.
Your Honor, I would seek to introduce the referenced lettered exhibit for identification into evidence at this time.
No objection.
Be received in evidence as states number.
And may I have permission to publish this item during the witness's testimony?
You may.
Mr. Camperlengo, can you see the document on your screen?
Yes, I can.
Can you explain for the members of the jury, and this is a touch screen if you need to point to anything in particular, what this section is about?
This is, and I'm not a tech guy, I'm the lawyer for the company. This is the location, the programmatic information location of where that information is located. The date 6/28 was the date that this query was run, and then you see the time 13:38, which is 1:38:22.
All right. The title of the document is History Log Report for CMANTHON, Log In and Log Out in the Unity System.
That's correct. And as I said, the Unity system is our clinical administration management system that each of the home health branches utilize in the care of the patients.
The CMANTHON appears in another section of this report. Can you explain what we're looking at here?
Sure. In that section, there's two, right next to on the first line, next to the CMANTHON, there's a number, the W with a letter, preceded by a letter. There's a W with a number, and then it ends in an A. That is indicating that CM Anthony logged on to her workstation, a desktop at the Winter Park office, and opened a session in Unity. And then right below that, and that was done on 3/17 at 7:02 and 2 seconds. Remember
That's
that?
Central Time.
That is Central Time, right. On the very next line, you see the same information, same workstation, and a B session. And what that is Unity is not a Windows application, so you can't toggle from one to the other. If you do, you lose all the information that you've entered. It's an old system. So generally what happens is the clinical managers open 2 sessions, one to be able to get administrative information and one where they can actually enter the information on the clinical system. So that's why there's an A and a B. But they were opened within a few seconds. And that's consistent all the way down the entire line of the entire document, right up until 3/28, March 21st, 2008, which was the period of the subpoena request.
All right. So when we see what looks like 2 logins, that is as a result of the system, the Unity system that your clinical managers utilize to be able to go back and forth between different applications.
Right. If you began to enter information on a screen and had to go to get up more information from another screen, and you left that first screen, you'd lose anything that you had previously entered unless you had saved it. So that second section allows you to go around and pull demographic information or doctor's orders information and things like that, so that you can go and fill your main screen when you're updating your patient's clinical record.
All right. Now, as it relates to the A and B associated with this number, 102937, you indicated that there was something about that would tell you that was a desktop or a workstation as opposed to a laptop. How do you know that?
In our company, we designate workstations or desktops in an office with a W as a workstation. If an individual has a laptop, it's preceded by an L.
All right. The 102937, what is that attributed to?
That's attributed to the terminal that was worked on.
All right. Does this record reflect that the same terminal was used the entire week?
That's correct. It's the consistent number throughout the document.
Okay. Do the records of Gentiva then show that user CMANTHON was at a workstation on March 17th, 2008, beginning at what would have been 8:02 and 2 seconds Eastern Time.
That's correct.
Okay, that's when the login occurred.
That's when the login occurred on that session. And then one session 19 seconds later at 7:02:02, 21 seconds.
All right. Are the employees, all employees, required to log in at the beginning of their workday?
No, not necessarily if they're not present or if you're not going to work on that system. If there's a meeting in an office, you wouldn't log on. It's not a rule that you have to follow, no.
All right. So what does a login signify then?
That the Unity system is going to be activated.
Okay. At the end of the record for 3/17/08, it says ended on, and then there are other times listed here, 16:52 and 41 seconds and 16:52 and 51 seconds. What does that record indicate?
Those are the logout periods when the person, this user, CMANTHON, logged out of the system, out of the Unity system.
All right. Now, does the Unity system stay up all day once you log in if you're not using it?
The system is running off a server in Kansas, but for the individual, no. And once you log out, you're out for that individual. But we're in 3 time zones. It's a 24-hour AS400, so it's constantly running. That never shuts off.
All right. Can you walk away from your desk all day and the Unity system stays up?
It can. There is a 5-hour, if you're out for more than 5 hours away from the system, it will automatically log you out. Right. But if you just walked away for 15 minutes, it would stay on.
All right. All right. If you log in and there's activity, you're conducting activity on the system, does the system stay up, or are there the 5-hour maximums associated with activity on the system as well?
If you're working and entering information, it will stay on until you log out, so long as you don't delay 5 hours.
All right. The explanation for March 17th, is that consistent for March 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st as well?
Yes, it's a process.
The Unity system on March 21st was started by user CMANTHON at what time?
On the 21st of March, there were 2 sessions. The first one was opened at 7:43 and 6 seconds Central Time. The second one was opened at 7:43 and 20 seconds Central Time.
And then the user logged off?
Both sessions were logged off at 16:37, the first one at 16:37 and 31 seconds, military time, 4:31 Central Time, and 4:31 and 41 seconds Central Time.
All right, so add an hour, and then you'll be able to tell what time it was in Florida.
In Florida, it would just add an hour, correct?
All right, may I unpublish that, Your Honor? If I may approach the witness with a composite exhibit RZ for identification.
You may.
Thanks.
We'd stipulate to RZ as well.
Your Honor, at this point, in light of the stipulation, I would seek to introduce RZ for identification into evidence.
What says the defense?
Yes, sir, we so stipulate.
Be received in evidence as states exhibit numbered.
345.
Now, the document that I placed in front of you, the original format of that is an Excel spreadsheet, correct?
Correct.
Okay. When that spreadsheet printed, it broke the document in half, essentially, because of the landscape format of an Excel.
That's correct. Looks like it was printed in Word.
All right. May we publish the Excel version at this point, Your Honor? All right. Sir, can you tell the jury, first of all, what this document is?
This is a journal report of the activity of the user CMANTHON for the week of March 17th, 2008 through March 21st, 2008. This is when I mean journal, is all of the activity under that user ID, and I'll explain what that is in a minute, the user ID, during that week. All of the entries into our Unity system. So once you log on, all of the changes to clinical records and things of that nature.
All right. The first line, I'll delete this in a second, has some acronyms or something unfamiliar to me. Can you explain what those various columns represent, A through I?
Sure. As I said, Unity was a system that was created based on an AS400. Again, I'm not a tech person, but it was probably created in the late 90s. So it's a journal entry system, and it works off of these journals. So what the first column A, means is journal entry, and that's some type of data that's entered into the system. The second is the date that it was entered, the JO date.
Those all stand for journal?
Journal date,
J-O?
yes. They're shortened versions of journal date. The column C is journal time. When I told you before about the Central Standard Time, the 07 being Kansas, this is Kansas time. The way this is that hour, minute, second time frame, but there's no, the zeros are cut off before a double-digit hour. So it's really 070202, which was the login time.
So that's 7 a.m. Kansas time.
That's correct.
Okay.
The journal job under D is the workstation, and then you can see the two entries. And the journal user is in the next one, and that's the user which we requested, which was CMANTHON. The job number is a data term that just tracks the number if the record ever needs to be retrieved and referenced. The job library is the database on which this is held. In this particular instance, it's held on OHSDB, which is the database, which stands for Ulster Health Services Database, which was Gentiva's name before it became Gentiva. The job objective and the job program are technical terms, which are the columns H and I on the document. This is the actual, the objective of where the data in column A is going, and in I is the program that gets it there. If I could.
Can you explain that?
Unity is like a loose leaf binder, okay? And in the loose leaf binder are different sections, and each of those sections are for a particular patient. Remember, this is a clinical management system. So if I were to make a change to one of the loose leaf pages, Every time I did, I lay another page on top of it and I hit enter. You'll see activity under the time, under the journal time, it'll stamp that I placed that other page on top of the Unity clinical record.
So the records are maintained electronically. You don't replace records, you just keep adding and adding, just like a patient file.
Right. And you'll see if you look at some of those records, there's 3 or 4 activities under a particular time frame. So that means I may have changed, like, for example, let me find them. Could you just move this over so I could see the line number?
So you can see the what?
The line number in Excel. Just move it over to the right a little bit.
Okay,
A little
the
more.
other way.
The
Here,
other
let
way.
me clear that,
The other way.
and we can,
I'm sorry.
here's the line number. Can you see them on
no.
the edge of the screen?
Could you move them to the left? Okay. Well, I'll take you to the time because I can't see it.
Is his screen not showing the entire record?
It's just not showing the Excel numbers. That's okay.
I don't know.
At 7:03:13, which is 07:03:13, there are 3 entries at the same time. That means that 3 separate items on that page were changed. So when the enter button was hit, 3 different, because the data went into a different table, 3 different stamps. So the patient information may have gone to one table, a diagnosis may have gone to another table, and a change of address, for example, may have gone to another table. That's why you see 3 things. The user didn't hit the button 3 times, but 3 different items were changed on that screen.
And that continues throughout the day of 3/17/2008, correct?
Right, under that B, the B session, there was no activity under the A session.
Okay. Can we move down the document to the afternoon hours of 3/17/2008? And 3/18. Okay. The 1241, and can you see line 110?
I see 12:41:27 as the time. I think that's 110. Again, it's hard to see the Excel numbers, but I think that's 110.
If you move your monitor, I don't know if it's just an aspect, because I see,
Right.
is
That's
the
okay.
110 displayed?
I think I got it.
Can you see the 110?
I believe it's 110. At 12:41:27?
Right.
Okay.
All right, would that be 1:41:27 Eastern time?
That's correct. Yes.
All right. And can you explain the activity from that line 110 through 133 at the bottom of the screen? Line 133.
I can't tell you the specific patient changes that were made to the patient file, but there were at least several that were made, changes to patient profiles in our Unity system during that time frame.
right.
Again, if you look at the one that you selected at 110, there were 2 items that were changed on that record, then 1, 2 on the next, and 3 on the next record, all at different times. So as the day progressed, so that they went from the period of 12:41 Central Time to 1:22 Central Time.
All right. Would it be fair to say then that the business records of Gentiva show that user CMANTHON was working on patient records at a terminal in the office from 12:41 Central Time down through 13:22, which is 1:22 Central Time, 2:22 Eastern Time?
Yes.
All right, if we could go down to, does this record continue all week in this fashion?
Yes, it does. Similar type of activity. Tuesday being the big heaviest day of the week because it's the date that we lock up all the offices, produce all of our plans of treatment, and which are required for us to bill for these services, but to also to send to the doctors to verify the care. In home care, normally what happens is you receive a referral from a doctor who'll say that the patient needs an assessment or some home care. The person in the office sends a nurse, field nurse or physical therapist out to the patient's home. And it goes through a whole process to capture all of the data, demographic data, what they call an oasis. And it's a very long 26 document. All of that's maintained in paper. Okay. It's brought back to the office and somebody in the office, a data entry person, enters what the nurse in the patient's home has filled out. It has physician's orders, it has demographic information, it has diagnosis, and it has the orders. The manager of clinical practice's responsibility is to ensure the accuracy that the patient is accurately diagnosed, that the information that the nurse has filled out is accurate, that all of the orders are in place to begin the process of forwarding that information to Medicare so that we can track the outcomes of the patient. And all of that information is tracked in that Unity system. So these journals that you see is either changes, alterations, changes in condition of the patient that are changed throughout the care of the patient. After the second, within 2 days of admission, the OASIS information is forwarded on to Medicare. So these records are important, and we're tracked by this.
Okay. If we could move down to the afternoon hours of March 21st of 2008. All right. Can you see line numbers on your screen? At the top of my screen, it says 5,069.
I see the 69, so I'm assuming it's the same one.
Okay. Do you see in column C, which is the time, the job time, as I recall you saying?
Yes.
All right. Can you move to what would be the afternoon of March 21st of 2008, 1 o'clock Central Time or thereabouts? Can you tell me what line that entry starts at?
The last two digits are 86. I can't see the first two digits.
All right, on 86.
I see an entry at 132744.
All right, Mr. Perez, can we highlight from 86?
Okay, there we go.
Better?
I can see it now. Okay.
To the,
That would be that'd be line 5086.
all right. What activity is reflected in the business records of Gentiva for user CM Anthony at 13:27:44 Central Time?
Again, I don't know exactly what the code stands for, but some activity, somebody hit the enter button to enter some data on a patient record. The original request did not ask for patient records, and again, I didn't produce it because it was, there's again, that HIPAA law that we have to follow. So it wasn't necessary for me to show you, but I could have included the information on the patients that this involved, but it wasn't necessary.
All right. Well, the identity of the patient is not essential to the tracking of what is happening to files, correct?
No, not at all.
All right. So there is activity on a patient's file starting at 13:27:44 Central Time by user CM Anthony, correct? At a desk terminal. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Does activity then continue from 13:27 Central Time through the end of the day? We can scroll down as well. Do you want him to keep scrolling?
Yeah, it appears to be, from what on the screen, there's activity throughout the account, throughout this user ID, through the afternoon, yes. You've got
Until
me
what?
to,
Go ahead.
if you go to the bottom of the page, I'll be able to see one. I can't see the time. Until 15:06:29 Central Time was the last entry made by that computer.
All right. And that would equate to 16:06 or 4:06 p.m. Eastern Time?
That's correct.
Are these network login accounts password protected? How do you make sure these patient records are secure?
Well, everybody has a unique identifier. The CMAN or the JN camper for me, an individual password that is changed every 90 days, according to HIPAA. As a good practice, we try to get best practices. There's a company policy not to share individuals' IDs. Does it happen? Yeah. The integrity of the AS400 Unity system is checked. There's no outside entity you can't get hit by a virus because the only updates come from IBM. They come through disks and are handed to our security officer, Mr. Stein, who updates them, the computer hardware, the AS400 system. And PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, is our external auditor. They conduct an annual audit on it because under Sarbanes-Oxley, as a publicly traded company, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Under Sarbanes-Oxley, there's a requirement that anything that a material process within your organization has got to be audited, and it is annually and certified by our outside auditors. And our internal audit also does testing to ensure that the veracity. And we're about patients in our company, and this is the most important aspect is the patient record.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned two names, Sarbanes-Oxley. What is that? And if you could spell it for the court reporter.
Sure. Sarbanesoxley was an act passed in 2002 following the Enron collapse, where public companies their processes were to be tested. There were certain tests that were be required by our external auditors and internal auditors to ensure that off-balance sheet types of activity were not occurring. And over time, for the last 9 years, public companies need to certify that they are Sarbanes-Oxley compliant. And it's on all of your papers, your SEC filings that you file with the SEC.
Okay. And as the Chief Compliance Officer with Gentiva, you are the individual ultimately responsible for ensuring that this legislation is complied with.
in addition to the CEO and the CFO. So this is a responsibility for all of the executive officers of the company.
Based on these documents that are the business records of Gentiva, does it show that user CM Anthon was at a workstation entering patient information into the Unity system on March 17th of 2008 between 1:30 and 2 p.m. Eastern time?
Okay, we get that. So 1:30 Eastern time. I have from 1:41 to, what was the second time?
I said 2. I just gave you a half-hour time range, but if you want to expand it, feel free.
Okay, could you repeat the times? I'm sorry.
March 17th,
Yes.
2008. We can just say between 1 and 3 p.m. Eastern time was user CMANTHON entering information into Gentiva's Unity system at a workstation.
Yes.
Do the business records of Gentiva also show that user CMANTHON was entering information into the patient records on March 21st, 2008, between 2 and 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time?
Two and 3 Eastern time?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, sir. Your Honor, I have no other questions of the witness.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Mr. Camperlengo.
Good afternoon, sir.
Camperlengo, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Sir, were you contacted in the summer of 2009 to provide any of this documentation to the state of Florida?
Objection, relevance.
Overruled.
Summer of 2009, no, sir.
Yeah.
My first was in last Friday, the Friday before, 24th.
So last Friday, after this trial began, and Mrs. Anthony testified, was the first time you were asked by the state of Florida to provide this information?
As the custodian of records, yes.
Okay.
First time. At no other contact.
And you weren't asked to provide any information prior to that to impeach Cindy Anthony until then?
No, sir.
Object to the form of the question, Your Honor.
Untimely, but,
No further questions.
okay. Can the witness be excused?
He may.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Deborah Polisano, DEBORAH, POLISANO.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Back in 2008, specifically in March of 2008, how were you employed?
I was a nurse and director for Gentiva Health Services
And where were you working for Gentiva?
in Winter Park.
Would that be at 1375 South Cimarron?
Yes, sir.
And that would be in Winter Park, Florida?
Yes.
What was your role? What did you do?
I was director of clinical management.
Can you tell the jury what a clinical director does or did at that time?
We're responsible for all the clinical staff, field staff, and the supervisory staff and ancillary staff in the office.
Put another way, did you run the office?
Yeah.
Okay. During this time period, how many people did you supervise on a daily basis?
Probably 20 to 25 plus field staff.
Do you know Cindy Anthony?
Yes, sir.
Was she working for you or with you at Gentiva in 2008?
Yes, sir.
Were you her supervisor?
Yes.
As a supervisor, would you be responsible, or what would be your responsibilities as far as the other employees, or in particular, Ms. Anthony?
Well, I was responsible for oversight of they had clinical teams. I was responsible for oversight of that and their job performance, did their job evaluations.
I'm sorry, were you finished?
Those types of things.
Back in March of 2008, what was Cindy Anthony's job at Gentiva?
She was what we call an MCP, manager of clinical practice.
Okay. And what was her daily role during this time period?
She had a team of field staff who worked under her, a census of patients who were assigned to her, and she was responsible for the clinical aspects and the paperwork for that team.
As it related to different patients?
Yes, sir.
Was this an office job?
Yes, sir.
Was this a job that Cindy Anthony had to leave the office many times during the day to perform?
No.
Did she have her own office?
She had a cubicle.
Was she a hourly or salaried employee?
Salaried.
And I guess that means she didn't necessarily have to punch a clock, correct?
No, we don't punch a clock.
But at the same time, did every employee during this time have to log in and log out once they arrived for work and when they left?
Yes.
Typically during this time period, how much time would be allowed for lunch?
Probably like an hour, half an hour. There was no set time for it.
Okay. If a salaried employee needed to, run to the drugstore and pick something up, would they be allowed to do that?
Yes.
Would they have to log out to do that?
Log out of the computer.
Yes.
You wouldn't necessarily have to log out. The computer would lock itself.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. During this time period, for you, and I take it you had to follow the same procedures as Cindy Anthony did when you first came to work in the morning and logged on, correct?
Yes, sir.
What would you have to do?
You have a username assigned by the company and a personal password. You put in your username, then you put in your password, and then you would have access to the programs.
Was each employee required to log on upon first getting to work?
Well, yeah, it's hard to do any work if you don't. Okay. Yes.
In order to go into the computer system and basically put in data, you would first have to be logged on, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. You had mentioned something about a log out or an automatic log off. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that a little bit more? Once, say, we'll use you as an example. If you were to go to work in the morning and you logged on and your system is up and running, would there be a period of time that your computer and your account would basically shut down or lock out because of inactivity?
Yes.
How long would the computer have to be unused or that account be unused before the computer would lock out?
15 minutes is the best estimate.
Now, the system would still be running, but whoever particularly signed on wouldn't be able to do anything else until they re-logged on, correct?
Yes.
Or logged on again?
Yes.
All right. Was Cindy Anthony a capable employee?
Yes, sir.
Did she work hard?
Yes.
Was she the type of employee, when you knew her back in March of 2008, that would take 2-3 hour lunches?
No.
If any employee that you supervised was gone for any extended period of time while you were supervising them, who would have to do their job?
Generally, I would.
Is this something that you would remember?
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Back then, would you characterize yourself as a tough boss?
No.
Okay. But you expected people to do their jobs, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. You had mentioned before that Ms. Anthony, as well as the other employees, had their own workstation or cubicle. Could anybody else use that workstation if they wanted to?
You could use the computer if it wasn't locked to someone else's user ID. You could go on, put your own user ID and your own password, but then it would be under your user ID.
And was it important for record purposes that only the person who is logged on using that particular computer is doing the data entry?
I'm sorry, that one I don't.
I guess, in other words, the computer should reflect who is putting in the information, correct?
Yes.
It wouldn't be a good idea for everybody to be using everybody else's accounts, basically.
It's against policy.
Okay. And that is something that each employee would be talked to about
Yes.
and we're aware of.
Yes, it was a compliance issue.
Is that talking about like HIPAA compliance? Or
Yes, it's
federal?
a HIPAA compliance and confidentiality.
Did Ms. Anthony, during March of 2008, have the capability to work from home?
No.
Could she log into her Gentiva account from a laptop computer?
No.
Could she log on to her Gentiva account via a desktop or a VPN account?
No.
Would it be possible for you to fix somebody else's time card or hours?
Would it theoretically be possible?
Yes.
Yes.
Would you do that?
No, sir.
Did you ever do that for Cindy Anthony?
No, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to publish what's been previously marked for identification and entered into evidence that states 318, which has been stipulated to be the time card history report of Cindy Anthony.
Okay, you may publish.
Mario, could you help me? All right. Ms. Polisano, do you see what's in front of you there?
Yes, sir.
You recognize this, and let me go to the title just for a second here. You recognize that as a time card history report.
Yes.
And again, this has been stipulated as to being Cindy Anthony's. You've seen these reports before, or you've seen this one before?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go down first of all to, and you can touch the screen if you like, if you need to, but let's first talk about 314,
Yes.
okay? It says PTO. What does PTO mean?
Paid time off.
So that would reflect that Ms. Anthony had a day off from work.
Yes.
And if we go down the line here a little bit, it still says arriving at 8 o'clock in the morning and working until 1600 for a total of 8 hours.
Yes.
Okay. Why does it do that? Is that because she's a salaried employee?
Yes. It doesn't really mean arriving at work. We just have to
Okay.
put that in so that there's 8 hours accounted for the PTO.
Okay. Now let's go to 317. Hold on a second. On 317, her time card reports or reflects, and correct me if I'm wrong, that she arrived at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
That would be when she would actually log on to the computer with her username and password,
Yes.
and then signing off at 1800 hours for a total of 10 hours. She worked a total of 10 hours on the 17th, correct?
Yes.
At least that's what the time card reflects. And if we go down to the 21st, her time card reflects that she worked that day as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
For a total of 9.50 hours.
Yes.
And again, this time card in its final form, would that be, whoops. approved by you.
Yes, sir.
Is that one of your duties as the director?
Yes.
How did you do that? How did you keep track of everybody's?
The time cards don't come in this form. It's computerized. We don't have, it's paperless system. It comes to me on a Tuesday morning before payroll on Friday. I check everyone's card for accuracy, or time for accuracy. If anything's missing, beside their name, it's a little red icon that says missing. Beside that is an icon that says email. I click on that, it generates an automatic email to say, please complete your time. I go over it to check for accuracy, and usually just to check if they forgot, if they were actually off that day and forgot and put they were in or something like that. And then I approve them, and it goes directly to payroll.
Now, being a salaried employee means that sometimes you're going to be expected to work more than a 40-hour week, correct?
Yes, sir.
If you work more than a 40-hour week, would you get comp time?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No.
Was there ever a time that you worked for Cindy Anthony that she would be allowed to be at home for comp time, and yet the records would reflect that she was actually at work and logged in?
No.
Would that be illegal to do?
Yes.
This Gentiva branch at 1375 South Cimarron, do you recall whether or not there is a Bank of America nearby?
I think on Aloma.
How far away is that approximately?
I don't know. It's not that far. It's this next street over and down a few blocks.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions of the witness.
Cross-examination.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Polisano.
Good afternoon.
Employees are allowed to run errands in the middle of the day if they need be,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And Mr. George had asked you in reference to a Bank of America. Did they show you a Bank of America receipt by Cindy Anthony?
Overruled.
In fact, not in evidence.
Overruled, we can answer the question. Call for yes, no, answer, ma'am.
No.
Did they show you anything having to do with Bank of America, from Cindy Anthony's account that show her at the bank as opposed to being at work when
No.
she's logged in?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Overruled on that objection.
No.
Now, when we say running errands, sometimes people have to go to the doctors, dentists, things like that, right?
Yes.
And you testified that you would have to do their job?
Not everyone, but the clinical supervisors, if the patients or families call in, or someone has to be there to answer the phones, usually I would do that.
Now, on July 15, 2008, Cindy Anthony had to go to a tow yard to pick up her car, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that required her to leave work in the middle of the day.
Yes, sir.
How long was she gone?
I don't know. I don't recall.
The direct examination only dealt with the month of March of 2008.
This is the same topic. This is the same topic about leaving errands and being on the computer, Judge.
Overruled.
How many hours was she gone? Approximately. It doesn't have to be exact figure.
Let me think. Probably an hour and a half, maybe 2 at the most, but I don't know for sure.
And what time was she gone from? Do you know?
No, it was sometime late afternoon, as I can recall.
Have you reviewed her records, her computer records for July 15, 2008?
No.
Okay. So you're not aware whether she was logged on or off on her computer?
She was working on her computer when she left, and she worked on her computer when she came back.
Let's talk about that for a moment. She came back and there was quite a big commotion when she came back, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there was the discussion of what she had found at the car and all that.
Yes.
And then she went back to her computer.
Yes.
And you actually had to force her to leave and go home and take care of her personal problems, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you did that, she didn't want to leave. She wanted to stay working on her computer.
Yes.
No further questions.
Redirect?
Just to be clear, ma'am, if the circumstances arose whereby you needed to do Ms. Anthony's work or any other employee's work, you would work under your username and password, correct?
Oh, yeah, on my own computer.
Thank you.
Okay, may the witness be excused. Thank you, ma'am. You may be excused. State may call the next witness.
Ruth Goldberger.